The first shot wasn't fired by the aliens, it was us. And that's why they're afraid. Nadia Steele, eyes locked onto the holographic display, felt the pulse of humanity's last fleet racing through her veins. The chaos of war, the distant hum of engines, the tension on the bridge, all of it faded to a low murmur as she focused on the single blinking red light. An SOS. Zarak. It was a name that had haunted her since the day they'd raised Earth's orbit to the ground. A name that carried the weight of countless dead, of shattered cities, of memories seared into her mind like fresh wounds. She clenched her fist, her nails digging into her palm. "Play it," she ordered, her voice sharp, focused. The bridge fell silent as the transmission began to unravel in the cold, mechanical voice of a Zarak officer. "Urgent request for assistance. The Zarak Collective is under siege. A grave situation. Immediate support required. Coordinates." The transmission cut out with an abrupt, garbled crackle. Nadia's eyes narrowed. The timing was too perfect. The Zarak, the conquerors, the relentless empire that had destroyed humanity's home, were now begging for help. "Is this a trap?" she asked, more to herself than the crew. Lieutenant Grayson, standing a few paces to her left, exchanged a glance with Ensign Kara. Grayson was a man of few words, but his eyes told a story. Kara, younger and brimming with optimism, wasn't so cautious. "It's an SOS, Captain. They're on the run. This could be the break we need." "The Zarak never run," Nadia replied, the weight of experience in her voice. "They might retreat, but only to regroup and strike harder. We've seen this before." Grayson took a step forward, his voice steady. "Then we hit them first. Harder." The words hung in the air. The silence that followed was thick with tension, each crew member locked in their own internal debate. The rest of humanity was fractured, their forces scattered across the galaxy, struggling to survive in the face of Zarak aggression. For some, the thought of striking back, of taking the fight to their oppressors, was a glimmer of hope. For others, it was a reckless gamble. But Nadia Steele had never been one to gamble. She was a strategist, a fighter who had clawed her way to the top of humanity's dwindling fleet not by chance, but by pure will. The last remnants of her people depended on her to make the right call. "Bring up the full data," she said, her voice cutting through the room. The display shifted, revealing the coordinates, a series of fragmented system maps, and the coordinates to a remote sector, deep within the Zarak-controlled space. It was a place known only for its importance as a staging ground, but nothing more. A place where Zarak forces gathered, refueled, and regrouped. "The Zarak are hiding something," she muttered, tapping a finger on the table. "This isn't just a call for help. It's a cover-up." Grayson spoke up again, his eyes steely with determination. "Captain, we've been cornered too long. This is our chance. We have the fleet, the resources, and the element of surprise. Let's hit them while they're vulnerable." Nadia shook her head, eyes still scanning the data. "The Zarak are never vulnerable, Lieutenant. They know their own strengths. If they're sending out an SOS, it's because they want something from us, something that's crucial. They'll be ready for us." The crew members exchanged uneasy glances. Nadia's doubt had settled over the room like a fog. The last thing anyone wanted was to walk into a trap. They had all seen the cost of overconfidence. But they had also seen the cost of waiting. "The question is," Nadia continued, her voice cold with resolve, "do we wait and risk losing everything, or do we take the fight to them now and see what we're really up against?" She turned to Grayson, meeting his gaze. The decision weighed heavily on both of them. If she hesitated, the Zarak would press their advantage. But if she moved too quickly, humanity might lose the last of their fleet to a trap. And with it, the last chance for freedom. A harsh voice suddenly broke the silence. "Captain," said Ensign Kara, her hands flying over the controls, her brow furrowed in concentration. "I'm getting something, encrypted signals. Lots of them. Not from the SOS." Nadia's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean, encrypted signals?" Kara didn't look up. They're directed towards Earth, from multiple locations. It's like, they're triangulating. Coordinating. Nadia's mind raced. What's the payload? Hard to say, Kara answered, her voice strained. But it's more than just a distress signal. It's tactical. The realization hit Nadia like a punch to the gut. The Zarak weren't just calling for help, they were preparing for something catastrophic. Perhaps the SOS was a distraction, a ruse to draw humanity in while they set a trap. Or worse, they were planning a counterattack with the might of their entire fleet, using humanity's fear as a weapon. She turned to Grayson, her expression hardening. Get the fleet ready. We leave in 1 hour. Grayson's eyes widened for a fraction of a second, but he said nothing. He didn't need to. He knew the stakes. Everyone did. Nadia was about to make the call. She was about to send humanity on a collision course with a foe that had wiped out entire species. If she was wrong, if the Zarak's trap was real, there would be no coming back. But if she was right, if there was a crack in their armor, humanity could break it wide open. She stood tall, her face hard as steel. We're going to find out what they're hiding. And we're going to make them regret ever thinking they could break us. The crew stiffened, a united force now. It was no longer a matter of survival. It was a matter of retaliation. A matter of proving to the galaxy that humanity could not be erased, no matter how many times they were knocked down. Prepare for immediate departure, Nadia ordered. And no matter what happens out there, remember this, we are humanity. We don't run. We never have. With that, the ship's engines roared to life. The fleet surged forward, slicing through the void with a fury that could only be born from the spirit of humanity, resilient, defiant, and ready for war. The silence in the command deck was suffocating, broken only by the rhythmic hum of the ship's engines. Nadia Steele stood at the helm, her fingers tracing the edges of the tactical map projected before her. The coordinates they'd received from the Zarak were clear, too clear. But there was no turning back now. Status, she asked, her voice tight with focus. Approaching the target sector, Grayson replied, his gaze fixed on his console. We'll be within weapons range in 5 minutes. Still no sign of Zarak reinforcements. Nadia's eyes narrowed. They'd been expecting a trap, a lie, but the Zarak sector appeared eerily quiet. Too quiet. Her gut twisted, telling her something was off, but her instincts had kept her alive through worse. We proceed as planned, she said, her tone sharp. No changes. Understood, Grayson said, and the crew began to move in synchrony. The anticipation in the air was electric, palpable. They were about to face the unknown, and the stakes couldn't have been higher. A sudden flash on the side screen caught Nadia's attention. Kara, at the communications station, had her eyes glued to the incoming data. Captain, Kara said, her voice strained, I'm picking up something. It's not a Zarak signal, but it's definitely coming from their fleet. A distress beacon. Nadia's eyes darted to the screen, studying the jagged, irregular signal patterns. It was too disjointed to be a simple distress signal, more like a message trying to hide in plain sight. Patch it through, Nadia ordered, her pulse quickening. The static was deafening at first, followed by a sharp, strained voice. It was in Zarak, but Nadia had the necessary translation software running, and the words hit her like a physical blow. Help, not Zarak, running out of time. Kara froze, her hands trembling over the controls. They're asking for help, but not from us. It's like a cry for mercy. The words hung in the air for a moment, incomprehensible to the crew. Nadia's mind raced. Not Zarak, she whispered to herself. She felt the weight of this new information pulling her in 1,000 directions. Who else could be involved? What did it mean for the Zarak's plans? Is the signal encrypted? Nadia asked, shaking herself out of the momentary daze. Not fully, Kara responded, her voice tight. I'm getting fragments of data. This is larger than a simple escape attempt. Nadia clenched her jaw, processing the new details. Whoever was sending that message wasn't part of the Zarak collective. She could feel the pieces of the puzzle slipping into place, but they weren't fitting together neatly. Her mind buzzed with the possibilities. Could this be an ally? Another species? A rogue faction? Continue to analyze, she ordered. We'll deal with it later. Right now, we stay on course. The command was simple, direct. But in her gut, Nadia knew things were already slipping out of her control. The fleet entered the target sector, and the stark emptiness of space stretched out before them like a dark ocean. No Zarak ships. No ambush. No movement. We've entered the engagement zone, Grayson called from his station. His voice was low, almost a whisper, as if speaking too loudly would bring the enemy down upon them. Reading 0 hostiles. Nadia's instincts screamed that something was wrong. The Zarak didn't operate like this. They were predators, and predators didn't leave their prey untouched. The silence was unnatural. Captain, we're being hailed, Kara said suddenly, her voice laced with urgency. Put it through, Nadia snapped. The hologram flickered to life before them, and the figure that appeared on the screen was unlike any human they had encountered. Alien, yes. But there was something unmistakably human about the desperation in his eyes. His face was gaunt, hollowed with fear. His voice, when it came, was shaking. I am Zach D, of the Tezra colony, he said, his words a frantic whisper. We were once allies to the Zarak, but they've turned on us. They've betrayed us. Nadia's mind raced. Tezra? She had never heard of them. The name meant nothing in the context of the ongoing war with the Zarak. The sheer scale of the revelation shook her to her core. What are you saying? Nadia demanded. Are you asking us to trust you? I know this is insane, Zach D continued, his voice trembling. But you have to understand, this is bigger than the Zarak. There's something else. Something they're trying to unleash. He was cut off by a burst of static. The screen blinked out for a split second, then flickered back on with Zach D's image distorted. His face was wild, his breath heavy as if he was running. They've sent it, Zach D gasped, and now it's... The transmission abruptly ended, leaving only the eerie silence of space in its wake. Nadia's heart hammered in her chest. Whoever this was, whatever he was, it was clear that he was afraid. Afraid of something far worse than the Zarak. Was that a trap? Grayson asked, his voice low. I don't know, Nadia muttered. But it wasn't a lie. The pieces were beginning to shift, but they still didn't fit together. The Zarak were the enemy. That was undeniable. But Zach D's message raised more questions than it answered. The Tezra colony had been mentioned as allies, but if the Zarak had betrayed them, there was more at play than just a simple battle for supremacy. We keep moving forward, Nadia ordered. Prepare for potential combat. Everyone, stay sharp. The fleet moved on, heading deeper into the unknown, where the shadows of the Zarak's plans hung over them like a death sentence. But Nadia's mind was already elsewhere, torn between the message they had just received and the deeper mystery now unfolding before them. As they moved into the depths of the sector, a massive object appeared on the scanner. It was unlike anything they'd seen before, massive, ancient, and unlike any ship in the Zarak fleet. It loomed like a great titan in the void. Nadia's blood ran cold as realization hit her. This wasn't just an ambush. It was a weapon. A weapon the Zarak had unleashed, or were about to. And it was coming for them. Cliffhanger. Nadia stood frozen, eyes locked on the display. The weapon, a massive, ancient starship, slowly began to power up, its energy systems flaring to life as if it were waking from a long slumber. A death knell in the quiet void of space. She turned to Grayson, her voice low but filled with grim resolve. Get us out of here. Now. But it was too late. The weapon had already fired. The weapon fired. A burst of white-hot energy erupted from the ancient starship, blasting through the cold expanse of space. The shockwave rippled through the void, leaving a trail of raw power in its wake. Nadia Steele felt the tremor in her bones, the pulse of destruction vibrating through the hull of her ship. The shields flickered, barely holding against the intensity of the blast. "Shields down to 30%, Captain," Grayson shouted, his voice strained. "We can't take another hit like that." Nadia's heart pounded as the reality of the situation slammed into her. The weapon wasn't just an ambush, it was a superweapon, an ancient relic of destruction beyond anything humanity had ever faced. If that first shot was any indication, they would be nothing more than debris before the day was out. "Get us out of here," she ordered, her voice steady but taut. "Engines, full power. All ahead." The crew scrambled to obey. But as the ship jolted forward, Nadia knew they weren't going anywhere fast enough. The Zarok superweapon was following them. Slowly, deliberately, as if it were savoring the kill. Kara, her face pale, was furiously tapping at her console. "Captain, I can't initiate full jump. The weapon's gravity well is destabilizing the coordinates. We don't have time for this." Nadia snapped, her eyes darting over the readouts. "Figure it out. We're sitting ducks." The enemy ship fired again, and this time, the blast hit the hull. The ship shook violently. Sparks flew from the control panels, and the lights flickered, plunging the command deck into brief darkness. The sound of metal screeching against the energy blast was deafening. "Damage report," Nadia barked. "Major damage to the starboard side," Grayson replied, gritting his teeth as he worked furiously at his station. "Hull integrity at 15%. Life support systems holding, but we're losing power." "We won't make it if we don't act fast," Kara said, her voice trembling but determined. "I've got a way to initiate a jump, but I need time to reroute the power. Just a few more seconds." Seconds. That was all they had. The clock was ticking, and Nadia's mind raced. The Zarok weapon was relentless, closing in with each passing second. She knew they couldn't outrun it, not with their damaged ship. And if they stayed any longer, the superweapon would obliterate them. "Grayson, take the helm," she said, her voice calm despite the chaos around them. "I'll handle the engines." Grayson didn't hesitate. He moved swiftly to the pilot's seat, taking control of the ship as Nadia ran toward the engine controls. Every part of her body screamed for action, for an escape, for a solution that didn't end in death. But her mind stayed sharp, calculating, analyzing, looking for a way to survive. As she began rerouting power to the jump drive, Kara's voice crackled over the intercom. "Captain, I've got it. Ready to jump in 5, 4. The weapon fired again. This time, the blast hit their rear shields. The ship groaned under the pressure, the hull beginning to bend. Nadia gritted her teeth, her hands moving faster, more frantic. 3, 2. Grayson's voice came through her earpiece, strained but clear. "We're not gonna make it. The weapon's too close." Nadia's eyes locked onto the glowing red countdown on her console. She had one shot at this. One shot to save them all. The jump drive systems hummed with power, ready to make the leap, but only if they could power it in time. "One," Kara whispered, her voice thick with tension. And then, without warning, the ship lurched forward, slamming them all into their seats as the jump drive activated. The stars blurred into streaks of light as they ripped through space. Nadia felt the sickening twist of the gravitational pull, the overwhelming force of the jump, but she forced her mind to stay focused. This wasn't just a flight to safety. This was a fight for survival. The ship shuddered again, the strain of the jump almost too much for their battered vessel. But then, it stopped. The blinding light of the jump faded, and all that was left was the cold silence of deep space. We're out?" Grayson asked, his voice still heavy with disbelief. Nadia's breath came in ragged gasps. She looked at the monitor, seeing nothing but the familiar swirl of stars around them. They were still alive. The weapon hadn't followed. "Not yet." "We're alive," she whispered, but the relief was short-lived. The cost of survival was written all over their battered ship, and in the faces of her crew. "We need repairs," Grayson said, his hands still gripping the controls. But we're safe, for now. Nadia let out a breath, wiping the sweat from her brow. The adrenaline was starting to fade, leaving behind a heavy weight of exhaustion. But she couldn't afford to rest. Not yet. Status on the Zarek, she asked, her voice hard. Kara's eyes were locked on her console, a frown forming on her face. They're not following. But... Captain, I'm reading a faint signal from the Tezra colony. It's encrypted, but it's close. Nadia's heart skipped a beat. Tezra? The colony Zach D had mentioned. The message they'd received was no coincidence. There was a deeper game at play here, something more than just the Zarek's desire for conquest. Patch me through, she said, her voice filled with resolve. Kara worked quickly, her fingers dancing across the console. The signal cleared, and the same desperate voice from before echoed through the speakers. Captain Steele, Zach D's voice crackled, you don't understand what's coming. The Zarek aren't the only threat. Something ancient is waking. It was buried beneath the Tezra system, something that can wipe out everything. It's not just the Zarek you have to fear. It's... The transmission cut out once more, leaving a cold, echoing silence in its wake. Nadia's mind raced. Something ancient? Something buried beneath the Tezra system? The pieces were falling into place, but the picture wasn't clear. There were far too many unknowns, too many dangers lurking in the shadows. Captain? Grayson's voice brought her back to the present. What do we do now? Nadia turned to face her crew, her eyes hardening with determination. Now we go to Tezra. We figure out what's happening there, and we stop it.